As tensions with Iran continue to intensify, NBC News is learning that the Pentagon is presenting plans to the White House to send up to 10,000 more troops to the Middle East. This as Iran's supreme leader for the first time publicly criticized his country's president, Rouhani, and Foreign Minister Zarif for the Iran nuclear deal. He has not called them out by name before. Joining me now is Maine Independent Senator Angus King, a member of the Armed Services and Intelligence Committees, who, of course, heard the briefing this week. The first major briefing from the military and from Secretary Pompeo. First of all, what do you think about this plan to perhaps present the president with the option of sending more troops?
Well, Andrea, the first thing to be said is Iran are not good guys. They're bad actors in the Middle East. Hezbollah, Hamas, Syria, Assad, IEDs, which they manufactured that killed Americans during the Gulf War. So no brief carried here for Iran. On the other hand, what's worrying me about this situation is we seem to be on a ladder of escalation, and the danger is miscalculation. And I don't think either side wants a war. I don't think Iran wants a war. I don't think President Trump wants a war. But what happens if there's firing on American troops in Baghdad, for example, or some activity in the Persian Gulf that cuts off the world's oil supply, or something that's a minor thing but leads to a retaliation? And I've looked at all the intelligence over the last 2 weeks. I'm on the Intelligence Committee, and the unanswered question is who's provoking whom? And as we escalate, sending more troops, moving aircraft carriers, we view it as preventative and as defensive. The problem is, if they view it as provocative and leading up to a preemptive attack, that could lead to a preemptive attack by them. Wars sometimes start by accident, and I think that's the gravest danger that we face right now in this situation. I would like to see some direct contacts between the administration and Iran to try to defuse this situation.
Well, it does look as though, for one thing, that the current cycle of threats from Iran, which have been, credibly reported, and I don't see the intelligence, but talk to a lot of people who have, those threats started after the State Department designated the Revolutionary Guard a terror group and took other actions to really squeeze their oil exports down to zero. So that's the chicken and egg, who started first, with them being bad actors in a lot of ways, as we have all been reporting for decades now. The other point today is that overnight the Ayatollah seems to have stepped it up by calling out Zarif and Rouhani for the nuclear deal. And he had not publicly chastised them before. Is this worrying?
Well, I think that's very dangerous and somewhat predictable. I believe that our abdication from the nuclear deal is one of the great mistakes that we've made in the last 4 years, because this is exactly what has happened is by walking away, we've empowered the hardliners. We've undercut, I don't want to call them moderates, but at least they weren't the hardliners in Iran. And basically, the hardliners can now say, and the Supreme Leader is now saying, we told you couldn't trust the Americans. Look, we made this deal. We abided by it, which, by the way, everyone agrees that they did. And America walked away anyway and broke their word. So that was one of I think, a great mistake that led us into this situation of confrontation. And there was no reason to take that course. And I think we're now seeing the fruits of it, that if there was any hope of some kind of, I don't want to call it normalization, but improvement of relations, it's now diminished as the Supreme Leader is criticizing those who made that deal.
Now, I wanted to also ask you about Rex Tillerson. We have the extraordinary spectacle of Rex Tillerson, a Secretary of State who was fired by the president on Twitter, now is being blasted by the president for testifying for 7 hours voluntarily to the House Foreign Affairs Committee, bipartisan members. The president today tweeting, Rex Tillerson, a man who is dumb as a rock and totally ill-prepared and ill-equipped to be Secretary of State, made up a story. He got fired, that I was out-prepared by Vladimir Putin at a meeting in Hamburg, Germany. I don't think Putin would agree. Look at how the U.S. is doing. Well, first of all,
where do you want to start?
Where do you want to start? He's referring to Putin as his witness, his defense witness, for the fact that he was not out prepared. I wanted to play Mike Pompeo today on CNBC by Andrew Ross Sorkin being asked about this.
Sure.
There was a report that he was interviewed by some congressmen from, and was asked about President Trump's values, and he said that he, meaning Rex Tillerson, was guided by, quote, American values such as democracy and freedom, but that he could not offer the same assessment for the president. What do you make of that comment?
It's pretty outrageous, and it probably explains why Rex Tillerson is no longer the Secretary of State.
Well, all of the criticism of Rex Tillerson aside, to have a former Secretary of State treated this way on Twitter by the president and criticized by his successor is pretty extraordinary.
Well, the first thing I thought of when I heard that, number one, I don't know exactly what Rex Tillerson said. I haven't seen the transcript of that 7-hour interview, but I think it's important. But the first thing I thought of was, wait a minute, who hired Rex Tillerson in the first place? The President of the United States. Nobody forced him to hire Rex Tillerson. He brought him into the administration of his own volition. And whatever you feel about ExxonMobil, I don't think somebody gets to be the CEO of ExxonMobil if they're dumb as a rock. I just think it's extraordinary that this kind of really sort of, I mean, to call it a personal attack is to dignify it. It's just sort of. As you see, I'm literally at a loss for words.
I know.
I think we have to, but I think we need to see what the transcript was to put it in context. I don't want to characterize what he said in 7 hours based upon a couple of secondhand reports of a few sentences here or there.
Understood. In fairness to everyone concerned, I do want to ask you about your new cybersecurity plan. Are you proposing this because you think that the administration is not doing enough? There's been some concern that after Tom Bossert left the White House, and in fact after Kirstjen Nielsen left, that she was good on this one issue in particular, right, that there's nobody really running cybersecurity.
Well, the project that I'm working on, and I'm co-chair with a fellow named Mike Gallagher, who's a Republican congressman from Green Bay, Wisconsin, a member of the House, is not about this administration or the Obama administration. It's about the fact that we really don't have a coherent cyber doctrine and strategy. And our mission is to do just that, because right now we are continuously, currently, today, at this moment, under attack. I talked to a utility executive recently whose utility, an electric utility, is attacked 3 million times a day, Andrea, 3 million times a day. And I've talked to small banks that are getting hit 100,000 times a day, sometimes by state actors, sometimes by garden variety crooks. This is a huge challenge for the United States, and it's one that we have to face. And right now, as I say, we really don't have a doctrine. And one of the biggest problems I see is that our adversaries virtually pay no price for attacking us. They pay something of a price, but nothing that would cause them to change their calculus and say, wait a minute, maybe we better not do this to the American election system or to the financial system or the electrical system. We've got to set up something that says to the world, we're not going to be a cheap date in cyber. You're going to pay a price if you come after us.
Senator Angus King, as always, thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea.